Hello and welcome to the Round 25 Supercoach Hub Team Lists podcast. Only a couple of weeks from the end now, and some of the shenanigans have started. I'm here this week with Supercoach Brain. How are you going, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Scoot. Looking forward to having a chat. There's a bit going on in the teams this week, so we're going to have plenty to talk about, I think.
Oh, it'll be a good one. How about you, Des? What do you reckon for this round, mate?
Yeah, I'm looking like I'm thinking there's going to be some big scores. You know, this is a round to target. And thanks for having me on as well, of course. Yeah, I'm thinking there's big scores coming this week. It's going to be a big moving week.
Yeah, for sure. 3 rounds to go. Like, if you can make some of those moves that bring in some of those real big targets this round, like there's a couple of really, really one-sided matchups, and we could see a lot of centuries this week. If you can bring a couple of those guys in, it can make all the difference in getting you to your head-to-head grand finals and just boosting your points in general. So it'll be a really good one to go through. Yeah. How are you guys tracking? How did you end up going last week? Did you escape some of the carnage?
I didn't. It's a great week for me to be on because I think I had probably the worst week I've had in about 8 or 9 weeks. I finished with 1162. Yeah, so pretty bad week. I dropped 700 spots. I'm sitting currently about 3,400, 3,460. So I've been hovering around the 2,000th mark, kind of on the precipice of top 1K for a couple of months now. And it's a bit of a slippery slope the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. I had a bit of a better one, but I'm on the outside looking in. I think I got 1329, but I'm still just ranked outside top 10K. Centre wings destroyed me this season. I kept selling people just before they hit 100. But what about you, Des? You tracking a bit closer to the big boys?
No, I'm actually not. I'm sliding down. I'm ranked about the same as Brain now, down at in the 3,000s. I've been sitting around that top 1,000. Between 1,000th and 3,000th for pretty much the whole entire season from the get-go. Just haven't been able to crack it. Just no big scores. It's been unfortunate. Last week I got 1,210, so it wasn't not terrible, but it was enough to lose 500 or so ranks up in that sort of area.
Yeah,
but just haven't had Harry Grant, and he just keeps killing me.
Yeah, it was sort of the opposite for a little while, but he's come good again. And it's such a ceiling game, Supercoach. Anything can happen. 1 or 2 lucky things go your way, and you're flying, and a couple of others, and you just fall. But that's the game that we know and love. We'll crack into the team lists now, and a bit of stability first before we get to some of the crazy stuff. We've got the Cowboys and the Sharks. Do you reckon this is going to have a lot of impact on the top 8, Des?
You'd have to say so. You'd say the Sharks are pretty much like cemented. They look good enough to make it now. Cowboys have been playing really well, but they'll need to win this game because you've got a team like the Roosters who have a pretty easy run, who could probably like sneak in. You've got the Knights as well who are looking like they're going to make the 8. So I'd say this is a pretty big game for the Cowboys. So they're going to need their guns to fire.
Yeah, I agree. I think probably for me, it's really a matter of 8th spot now with the Rabbitohs, whether they can hit form. I thought they really would unlock last week and finally put it together against a weaker team. But yeah, they're still sort of stuttering along. Do you reckon anyone else might sneak into the top 8, Brain?
I don't know. It's tough, isn't it? Because when you're looking at Sharks are in 5th, and you've got the Raiders, Knights, Rabbitohs, and Cowboys all within a win of each other. So you're right in a sense that this first game of the round is going to be pretty impactful to the way things move over the next 3 weeks. There's only 3 weeks left, and I don't know. I don't really feel good about the Raiders, if I'm honest. I think if there's anybody that may drop out of the 8, it could be them. But if the Cowboys can get a win up against the Sharks this weekend, they're back up into, depending on how the Knights-Rabbitohs game goes, they're back into the 8, and whoever loses that game drops out. So there's plenty to play for the next 3 weeks.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Raiders' points differential got a massive hit last week, and it's so bad now that basically they look stable with their points, but like any time anyone gets close to them, they're the one that's going to fall out. So that's the way it works. We'll crack into the actual team lists now. Not too much happening with Cowboys, we've got Jeremiah Nanai coming in. He's slotting in straight into the starting side with Lukey on the bench. Then over on the Sharks side, it's pretty much 1-17. So I'm really not sure how this one's going to go, to be honest. There's a couple of inconsistent, high-ceiling Sharks backliners that we know and love. If you benched Mulatalo versus Garrick last week, it may have worked out for you. But yeah, it's a hard one to pick this game.
I think potentially hey, if we go on past experience and we look at the season, the Sharks obviously play well against bottom 8 teams. Hey, Cowboys are technically in 9th. So the tough thing is they're travelling up to North Queensland. So that's a pretty tough road trip up there. But again, North Queensland are without Val and will be without Val for the rest of the regular season. So I kind of feel like the Sharks might get the leg over on the Cowboys this weekend.
Yeah, I tend to think that they showed enough against the Rabbits the other week to say that they can be a top 8 team. What about you, Des? Have you got anyone that you're particularly looking at in this game?
Obviously Nico Hines, like whether you chuck the VC on him, I'm always just wary of these Thursday games, but I think because it's being played in North Queensland, it's probably, I don't know, it seems like it's a Sydney thing, where it's slow Thursday games, so it's always a fast track up there. The Sharks, they try and push their play the ball speed. So I'd say, yeah, it's gonna be fast play the balls wins this game. And you've got Reece Robson and Brayley as the hookers. I think they're gonna be pretty influential. So I'm almost looking at playing Reece Robson because I have him as my second hooker, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, it's a tough one hooker this year. There's only a few up the top, but I mean, Blake Brayley had a good score last week. Somebody who we definitely do have to talk about, especially with Matt Moylan on the bench again, is Cameron McInnes. Des, have you watched the rise of Cameron McInnes now that Dale Finucane's been out?
Yeah, I mean, we've always known that McInnes has been he's always been that Supercoach player over the years. He's kind of always lurked around. He's had that dual hooker second row status quite some time as well. So yeah, I mean, he is just a tackle bot at the end of the day, but against kind of easier teams, he can slide in through weaker defenses straight through and dive over. But I don't see the Cowboys kind of relinquishing that area to him as much. So, you'd kind of be hoping that he makes 60 to 80 tackles, we have to say, because he can make that many.
Yeah, well, after that monster effort the other week, he probably deserved a bigger score. But I mean, that's the way it works. Tackles are only worth 1. So, yeah, but I think he's probably too expensive now to chase. He was in the low 500s for a while, and now he's pushed himself up to 700k. So I wouldn't probably be swapping him out for anyone at the moment. Would you have any scenario, Brain, where you potentially would look at McInnes?
I don't think so. There's another couple of guys that I'd probably look at before him that have nice matchups this week. I'm sure we'll talk about soon, but Des is right. You're relying on a game that is quite a grindy game if McInnes is going to score well as well. So if the Sharks put up some points and the Cowboys put some points on the Sharks, there's going to be a lot of standing around under the posts that McInnes doesn't usually benefit from too much. He relies on base and he relies on those kind of grindy, slow games, and this isn't going to be that. So, definitely not the week and not at 700k.
Yeah, well, we found that out far too much last week when Jermaine Hopgood, who's got a lot more to offer, stood under the posts for a lovely 41 in that Broncos shellacking. So, yeah, probably a better one to look at the ceiling, guys, as you said. Anything else probably to talk about this team, or we'll move on to the Friday night games?
Just, I guess, on the Nico VC, he scored 126 against him in round 9. So it's one thing to think about. I know I agree with Des on the Thursday night thing. I have a rule now that I'm never touching anybody VC or C on a Thursday night. I just don't. It's burnt me so many times. It's not funny, and I'm probably going to avoid it. I think there are some good options this week that you can look at instead of Thursday night. Yeah,
that's a fair one. All right. So first Friday game, we have the Warriors versus the Sea Eagles. The big news is C&K, despite its third failed HI of the year, is back after just the 1 week. We've got him, we've got Dallin, we've got Johnson. We pretty much have a full-strength forward pack at the moment, apart from Mitch Barnett. So the bench looks pretty strong. It's pretty much 1-17, apart from Bunty in and Barnett out. And, CNK owners will be breathing a sigh of relief that he wasn't out for longer. On the Manly side, we've got the usual suspects, Garrick at fullback. Pretty much the only things we have changing is we've got Burbo out again. It just seems like he's an injury magnet, this bloke. And Brad Parker out, being replaced by Morgan Harper. And Tuilagi moves back into the starting side. Dez, are you a CNK owner?
I am. I brought him in for his injury-affected score the other week, so I'm glad that he's back. I was almost tempted to trade him last week, just rage trade him straight back, maybe to like a Dallin, but yeah, I held on, thankfully. I'm not liking Manly's chances in this one, to be honest. As a fan, I think they're going to get creamed. I thought that last week, though, and they kind of put up a fight against Penrith, so you never know, but I just don't think they travel well to New Zealand. And yeah, I'd say stack up on your Warriors, and maybe even Sean Johnson could be a sneaky captaincy option.
Yeah, it was a game that they had to try and throw everything, including the kitchen sink at Penrith, to get a result, and it was sort of working for a while. But yeah, if they had Penrith on their A game, I don't think they would have got anywhere near that close. So the Warriors could have some joy. Brain, what have you got? Anything interesting that you're looking at in the Manly side, or not really the time for Sea Eagles?
No, I agree with Des. I think this is going to be tough for Manly. This trip over the ditch for one, and then I mean they're coming up against a red hot Warriors side that are nearly full strength, like you mentioned. So I think it's going to be tough for them. But then again, I mean you've got to give them props for what they did against Penrith last week. I think that they'll take a lot of confidence from that, hopefully, and I'm sure the Manly fans are going to be thinking the same thing, hoping that they can take that confidence across the ditch. But CNK makes such a big difference to this Warriors team. I don't think everyone realises how much of an impact he has. So I feel like with him back in the team now, Dallin Watene-Zelezniak is due for a big game. Manly have conceded 16 tries to their right against right wingers this year, which I think is fourth most tries in the comp. That left edge defense is pretty questionable. So I feel like CNK and DWZ are probably in for some points, and SJ off the back of that too.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only couple that are worse, I think the Dragons are up there, and maybe the Eels as well. But yeah, it's not fantastic defense on that side. So yeah, it could be some joy for those guys. It could be a couple of multiple centuries, but we'll have to see how it goes. Ruben Garrick bounced back to form with an 80 last week. I mean, they're a little bit of a worry for a while because he just didn't look real flash. He didn't really look like somebody he wanted to have. But I mean, he's Ruben Garrick. We know what he can do at fullback, and he's turned out fine.
Would you play him this week?
I think it depends how many you have and who else you're taking the reserve off. I haven't got the most flash team value, and I might have to play him. But yeah, if I had a bunch of other options, I would consider benching him.
Yeah, I can probably bench one of my centre wings this week, but I've got AJ, CNK, Garrick, Mulatalo, Marju in my centre wing. So I could take a punt and sit AJ this week. That's an option, but I'm not going to sit Garrick again. I sat him last week for his 80, so I don't want that to happen to me 2 weeks in a row. I'll play him this week, I think.
Yeah, good stuff. There's not really a lot other than buy Warriors, play Warriors, and that's about it from this game. Do you reckon, Des, anything else we got before we move on to the next Friday game?
Not much. I mean, I guess, yeah, it's just whether you'd sit someone like Tohu Harris. I've sat him for, I think, the last 3 weeks, and it hasn't worked out. He started to score meat pies just out of nowhere. It's just the classic Supercoach curse where you sit players and they start scoring tries for the first time in eons. So I don't know. I'm really tossing up whether I sit him or not. So yeah, that's kind of the only one.
Yeah, that's a good call. All right, now we go on to the struggling Eels versus the Roosters. On paper, before you looked at the team list, you would have thought this would have been a pretty close game. But like, I do not like Para's chances now. We've got Dylan Brown moving into the 7 role with Moses out with a fractured cheekbone. Should be probably out for the rest of the year. Arzi moves into the 6. We've got Simonson back in the centres. We've got this very unusual forward pack of Joe O at 13 and Hopgood moving to the edge. I don't know what Ryan Madison's done, but he just can't buy an edge start at the moment. We've got Hands on the bench, Grieg and Luca Moretti to round it out. On the Roosters side, their back line is all pretty much up to standard. Drew Hutchison still on the 7 after his fantastic, huge score last week. Don't chase Drew Hutchison, but that was a real fun one anyway. Not really a lot changing other than we've got Angus Crichton on the bench and Sam Walker down in the 18, so we might be seeing him reasonably soon. All right. Is it really... If you had any of Gutherson, Hopgood, and potentially, I don't know about maybe Madison. Are they guys you're looking to move on this week potentially, especially with a tough run home and a bye in round 27?
I think it's good timing if you were thinking about it. That bye in round 27 is a killer. So you get a game against the Roosters, and then who do they play next week? Panthers. So not the greatest 2 games ever. So maybe Hopgood to someone this week might be a nice option considering his move to an edge, but I'd actually see him probably going back to 13. Joe maybe shifts back to the bench and Madison starts it on the edge. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the way that they end up starting. So yeah, it'll be a close watch, I guess, an hour from the game to see the teams. But yeah, there's merit to sell them all. I think Gutherson might take the kicking, though. That's probably the only thing to keep in mind with Mitchell Moses out is that he'll probably take the goal kicking, but how many points are they going to score in the next 2 weeks? So
well, that's the thing with some of these Eels players. Like, they got absolutely towelled up. They stood under the posts, and they might be doing that again in a couple of weeks. Although they don't mind playing the Panthers sometimes, I don't think they're going to get close in a couple of weeks. So I don't mind selling. Des, do you reckon there's an argument for holding and playing some of these guys through that tough game?
Maybe. I mean, Hopgood's been pretty solid all year. Last week was kind of one of those anomaly games. He's only had a couple of those games where he scored, sub 60 really. If you have, some people would have Moses as well. I guess you have to you sell him to Cleary. If you have the money. I don't know if there's any other cheap halfbacks. People might be scrambling for a cheap halfback if they've left themselves short on some money. So that's an interesting one to watch. But yeah, I think Madison, Hopgood, I think you kind of just have to hold and hope at this point. It's like the Eels aren't that bad. I mean, we haven't seen much of them without Moses, and Arcee's a pretty good player. So you never know. They might, they've still got top 8 spot to play for. So they're not going to just fold over, I don't think.
Yeah, we've got a couple of interesting games this week that are all in and about that 8th spot. We've got Sharks versus Cows, 5th versus 9th. Then we've got Rabbits and Knights, which is 7th and 8th. Then we've got basically an elimination final of Eels and Roosters this week, so that are just on the outside at 10th and 11th. So whoever loses is basically gone guaranteed, while the other one has just a slight sliver of hope. So it might be a game that they do try and stand up.
Potentially.
Yeah. I think the Roosters are actually a very solid chance at still making the 8 if, as we said, the Raiders are not playing that well. If they lose all their games from here on out, the Roosters have that better goal difference than them, and they've got the Tigers next week. I think I'm looking at that final round, Roosters versus Rabbitohs. That could be a massive game. So I think Roosters will probably be too good for them in this one.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Brain, is there anyone on the Roosters that, unless you already have them, you're going out of your way to buy, like Manu and Tedesco? They're sort of thereabouts, but like there's probably other players that I'll be looking for their ceiling this week. Yeah,
I agree with you. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Manu's a great option, and most people have Manu. He's definitely not a pod. A couple of weeks ago, I did CNK, Manu to CNK, and then CNK got knocked out for 15 points. So that worked out fantastically for me. But Sam Walker is 18th man, I think, in this one as well. So that'll be interesting to see whether he comes into the team late. That might, boost the Roosters' hopes of making the 8 if he can string a couple of games together at the back end of the year.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one because it's taken. How long has it been? It's been 3 months. It's just keep getting re-aggravated, or maybe not re-aggravated, but just not getting up to the strength that they wanted it to be. So it'll be an interesting one to see if he can slot straight in when he does get in.
Yeah, maybe the only other player from this game I'd look at might be Daniel Tupou. He's got a really nice matchup. Target that right edge defense again. Eels have conceded the most tries to left wingers. It's worth noting as well. So Daniel Tupou might be a sneaky little play there if he can get over the line a few times the last 3 rounds.
Yeah, he'll be an interesting one. And probably the last thing that I'm really looking at in this game is just that Angus Crichton is going to be 80% owned in 2024, isn't he?
Yeah, one of the first ones picked, I think.
Yeah, he's going to be so cheap. Dez, have you got anyone that you're eyeing off in this game, or it's pretty much a bit half and half?
Yeah,
maybe?
I mean, I guess Tedesco is always a guy that can score massive on his day. He hasn't clicked into gear this season. But, the Roosters really do need to win their last 3 games, and Teddy's the guy to do it. He's the guy to, if it is going to be Tupou scoring, a hat-trick on the left edge, it would be Tedesco feeding him, you'd have to say. So he would be the guy that I'd almost be eyeing up to bring in for a late season swivel on him.
If you still own Gutherson, would you potentially go Gutherson to Teddy?
I'm not sure. It's a really tough one because, I would if Moses was still playing, but Gutho has the kicking, so it's an extra 20 points for him, and his base isn't that bad, he still scores points. So, I mean, I guess you kind of have to though at this point. I'd say yes. I'd give it the green tick.
Yeah, that's fair. That pretty much does that game. Anything else before we go to the Saturday ones?
No, I think we're good.
All right, now we move on to some of the spicy ones, and we get to this Dolphins team list that is definitely 17 players. We've got lining up from fullback, we've got Nikorima, then we got Zarko there, and then we have Bostock and Robert Jennings in the centres. Tavare is nowhere to be seen down in the bottom of the reserves. We've got Tezzy Yu on the other wing, Katoa and Sullivan in the halves, Bromwich and SA at prop. Harrison Graham moves into the hooker role with Jeremy Marshall-King hurting his shoulder again. We've got Kafusi and Owen Aitken at the edge. Lemuelu not playing this week after that failed HIA. And Mark Nichols at 13. On the bench, we've got Collins, Kerr, Milford, and Jared Wallace. Look, we'll take a break before we get to the Tigers because there's just so much to unpack here. That is one of the biggest swings I think I've seen all season from a team list perspective. Is this a potential game where the Tigers players can go ham?
No. I'm a Tigers supporter, so I'm allowed to throw a little bit more shade than everybody else. But, I mean, we don't play well when we're the favourite. That team list that you just mentioned from the Dolphins screams Tigers $1.40. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jermaine Asako goes massive this week. Tigers don't defend right wing as well. It's a nice matchup for him, but they're just missing so many troops, aren't they? And JMK is so influential for the Dolphins that it's clear they hurt a lot when they miss him. So I honestly don't know who's going to win this one, but I have no confidence that the Tigers will do the job.
Yeah, it's a really tough one. And even somebody like Lemuelu, who's got a bit of attacking strike out on that edge, it's just there's little chips taken out of them all around. So I think you are right. I think Izako can go really massive, but I think the rest of them could. I don't know if there'll be many that'll go over 50. There just doesn't seem much that excites me in this team at the moment. Is there anyone other than Izako you'd probably be looking at, Des, or it's pretty much play your Tigers?
For the Dolphins, I think Izako is just he's head and shoulders above the rest. I haven't owned him all season, and it's just killed me. But every week I come on podcasts and I say, people who are selling, there was talk a couple of weeks ago about selling Izako, and I was like, he's averaging like 77. You know, at the time he was averaging more than Ponga. So like, why on earth would you sell him? He's a try scoring machine. He's basically their only attacking outlet. Yeah, but for the Tigers, I own Bateman and Isaiah Papali'i, who have both been kind of underperforming. I expected them to be much better than they have been. So it's going to be interesting whether I, sit or start those guys as opposed to like, your Ryan Madisons and Hopgoods. So like there's nothing saying you can't just, sit your Eels players this week and play your Tigers second rowers. But yeah, it's kind of like you're gonna be hoping for a grind of a game here, which it could be, an error-riddled slogfest. That's what I'm predicting.
Yeah, it might not be a pretty one to watch. The only other one that even has an inch of Supercoach relevance really be Cody Nikorima. Like if you've got him, he hasn't been too bad. He's come back a little bit, but especially with that duel, he'd be very handy as the second hooker option if you've managed to hold on to him for this long. But I mean, it's pretty much his Zarko or bust, as you've been saying. All right, we'll move on to the Tigers now. And in a massive turn of events, compared to the Dolphins, they're 1-17. It's pretty much as per as it's written. Like we've got Papali'i and Bateman on the edges. Bateman's not starting lock. We've got Pole at lock, and like that's pretty much it. Buller has probably been sold a good while ago by most of us. And then there's a couple of second rowers. I don't think they're really one of the teams you've got a lot of highly owned players from, to be honest.
Yeah, you're looking at Tigers players as pods, aren't you? Like Bateman was a bit of a pod there for a while before everyone jumped on him, and Isaiah Papali'i's sub 10% owned around that mark, isn't he? So no, there's no other option there that I'm looking at. I mean, Harry Grant's the hooker. You don't need to look at Appy. So yeah, you're limited with options from the Tigers, I think. And look, they're coming dead last for a reason. They're not exactly playing great football, so I'd rather look elsewhere.
Yeah, Coruscant is also one of those guys that if he plays 80 minutes, he can score really well, and then he can also have like a 32 in 57 minutes, and then you're wondering why on earth you bought him. So definitely on board with you there. Dez, if you own Papali'i and Bateman, as you were saying, and you do have Hopgood and Madison, how would you rank those four, do you think?
That's a bloody good question. It's really tough. I mean, Bateman scored 75 last week. I think he had a line break and a line break assist, though, so it's whether he can notch up those attacking stats. You're just relying on these guys to make 50 tackles a game. I think he's still I'd still put Bateman at the top, though. He's still got the tackle bust. He's got the run across the field. He's got the offload, which it seems like Papali'i's kind of put that away this season. He's put away the offload and those runs across the field. He just doesn't look 100%. So I'm going to put him at the bottom, and then I'd put Madison and Hopgood in the middle somewhere. They're kind of interchangeable. I'd probably put Hopgood above him, because I think they'll have to play him 80 minutes for the rest of the season if they want to make the 8.
Yeah, I'd agree with those top two. I think Bateman had to play a fair bit of centre the other week as well when there were some injuries, so I think he's probably going to be all good to go. I'd probably have Bateman and Hopgood at the top, and then probably Papali'i and then Madison for me. But I mean, it's just me as an Eels fan wondering what on earth is going on with Brad Arthur and the way that it's playing. As you said, if he does end up starting with the late switch now before team lists, I'd probably put him back up above Papali'i. All right. I think we can probably move on from that game and go on to the Saturday games. Now we have the second really interesting team list of the week. We've got the Titans up against the Panthers. The Panthers are reasonably close to last week's team, although we do have Jerome Luai back in. And we still have Tyrone Peachy. He's just nowhere to be seen. It's just not happening for him. It feels like he's re-aggravated or something isn't right. I hope we see him before finals, but anyone who picked him up a little while ago after that massive run, it's just turned out not too good. On the Titans side, we start off with Keanu Keeney at fullback, AKP and Philip Sami on the wings. Brian Kelly and Aaron Shoup in the centres. And then we've got a very different combination in the halves of Jaden Campbell and Tom Weaver makes an appearance. Then we have Fodawaker and Jolliffe as the props. Chris Randall at 9 after Verrill suffered that injury and surgery the other week. Fafita and Khaleesi Haas at the edge. Fasua Malaawi at 13. Then on the bench, we've got Cruz Leeming, Liu, Stimson, and Jacob Alick. All right, that's a lot to unpack, especially in that Titans backline. Des, is there much to be interested about with guys like Keeney and Campbell, or it's not the time of the season for them?
It's not the time, and it's not the game either. I think, yeah. I mean, if they were playing the Tigers, you'd be like, okay, maybe, but they're playing the best team and the best defense in the comp. So I think you're going to see a slaughter here, to be honest. And it's the week to really captain Nathan Cleary. Like, he's definitely the number one pick for mine. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, this isn't the game you're worried if you don't own him, whether he goes for 100. This is the week you're worried he's going for 150. It's definitely one where he can stand up and do some real damage. So I think I will definitely be putting the VC or the C on him. It's just whether I guess choose to vice someone before him, because there's a couple of good options later in the week. Are you potentially putting a straight C on Cleary, Brain?
Oh, look, I think I might VC. I can make it work. The 225 that he scored against the Titans 2 years ago is like etched into my brain. And like everything makes me think that could honestly happen again or go close with, it took you about 5 minutes to get through all the changes for the Titans. So, the one thing for me is Kieran Foran being out, I think is a big loss for them. Does that hurt David Fafita? Probably. Against the best defense in the comp. I think you have to either VC or C Cleary. If you don't, you're in some trouble, I think.
Yeah, it's just the matchup that will really, really potentially go well for him. Like, straight after that game, you've got Cameron Munster playing the Dragons. But like, if you VC Cleary, what sort of score are you gonna want to loop with Munster straight after and no updates coming in?
I think 135-ish. Anything over 130, I think, is a loop. I mean, it sounds crazy. Like, a few seasons ago, it would have been like, 100 would have been a loop. But yeah, I think you need 130 with those matchups coming after him. I think I'm going to straight C him because I don't have any Melbourne players, and I'm almost considering bringing in Munster this week, but I think I'm just going to go straight C Cleary and just hope for the best, because he normally has those bounce back games. Like, he didn't have the greatest game against Manly last week, wasn't really in the thick of it, but I think Luai back will kind of kick him into gear.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just nearly every sign points to a really, really big score from Cleary, and just it could be 50. It could be 50-0. Like, it's going to be absolute carnage. Is there, besides playing your Panthers, is there really much else to talk about in this game? I mean, you've got potentially, I guess there's interesting discussions on whether some of these players get rested now, because the Broncos and the Panthers, they're pretty much the only teams that can make the minor premiership, and the Panthers have got the higher points differential, but the Broncos can win their last few games, and then potentially maybe the Panthers don't rest all of their players against the Cowboys so that they keep the minor premiership. Do you think that there's a chance that all of these players will play round 27?
I think there's every chance at the moment, to be honest. You're going to want to wrap up first place. So, and if they go and rest all their origin guns or whatever it be in round 27, against the Cowboys, they're not a pushover team. Maybe do it against the Tigers or the Dragons or the Titans, who are already at Mad Monday, but you wouldn't do it against the Cowboys, especially when the Cowboys have enough to play for this year as well. I think we'll get. I don't think we'll see as much resting as we thought.
Yeah, there's been a bit throughout the season as well. There's in round 20 and even in the middle of Origin, there are a few guys who got rests. other than the buys. So, yeah, especially with the ladder the way it is, I think it could pan out that way. Des, if you were looking at players to bring in for this game, would you be looking at some of the backline players like To'o?
Yeah. I mean, I brought in To'o, not that long ago, actually. It was only like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I kind of just saw they were going his way. He seems to be running the ball pretty strong out from the back. It's just like he has lots of opportunities to score each game, as long as they get it out to him. I think, is Hosking still at right centre?
They've got Peachy and Critter there.
Oh, Peachy's there. So yeah, it's an interesting one because Peachy doesn't really like to throw the pass, but I think Peachy would surely be on the left, wouldn't he? Critter on the right. Yeah. Critter also been known to hold the ball, so I mean, yeah, it's a tricky one. He's kind of the only one that I'd be looking at, To'o, but yeah, with the chance at restings, it's unlikely that they rest, but I think there's probably better options almost. But you'd have to hope if you did bring him in that he goes, for a hat trick this game and goes 130 odd, which he could do.
Yeah, definitely. The only one thing I did miss, Brimson's in the reserves. I don't know whether that's because was he carrying something? He's carrying that like abductor injury or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think it's some sort of niggling injury that keeps popping up. But I mean, if they're naming him in the reserves, he's every chance to play, right? So
yeah.
But the one thing that was attractive for me is Jaden Campbell playing 5'8", and then the first thing that I think about is who's running at him, because if he's up in the defensive line, that right edge for the Panthers could have an absolute field day. It could be Crichton, it could be Liam Martin, it could be To'o. They're just going to shift the ball right all game, and they're going to run it at Campbell all game if he's up there. So if Brimson comes in, I mean, Keeney drops out. Does that affect Campbell? Probably not. Maybe he stays at 5'8" because Foran's out. So that right side could be good.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see in the late updates. All right. Move across to the Dragons versus Storm, another game where there could be some big ones. Harry Grant and Cameron Munster, probably the big ones to talk about. Is this a game we're worried about Munster centuries?
I mean, I'm not worried about it. I'm hoping for it, personally, as an owner. So much so that I think I'll throw the captain's armband on him this week. I just feel like Munster's due. He's due for a big one. I just feel like he's close. So this could be the game. This is the matchup.
Yeah, Des, you were saying you're thinking of bringing him in. What situation would make you want to bring him in this week instead of Holding?
What situation? I guess if you're behind in like a head-to-head or something, or if your head-to-head opponent has the captaincy on him and your vice-captain hasn't gone particularly well, I think that's the time. But even if you're playing overall and you don't have him, I think, yeah, this is the week to bring him in. The Dragons just have nothing to offer in defense, and Munster just bullies those bottom teams. He just, he's untouchable some games, and this could be one of those games where he just is untouchable. So, yeah, I did the trade just then, Cody Walker.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
And another interesting part, especially looking at Storm players going forwards, is that Ryan Pappenhausen's finally coming back through reserve grade and cup. He's looking like he's back. It'll be really fantastic. Do you think there's a chance he comes back for round 26 back at Amy Park?
I think round 27 he's back properly. I think maybe next week they'll play him 20 minutes off the bench or something. I was listening to NRL Physio on his podcast, and he was thinking the same. And then he plays 80 minutes in round 27. Meaney moves back to the wing, which I don't think is a bad thing for Nick Meaney either. But yeah, I'd say they're going to give him a couple of weeks to ease back in.
Yeah, could be a good call. Is there really much interest at all in the Dragons, Des? I mean, Dan Russell as a cash out has been all right and produced some pretty decent scores, but I mean, he's sort of in that price bracket now where he's a bit of an awkward one to bring in at this time of year.
No, I don't think I think you look elsewhere. The Dragons are not the team to target, even for like nothing out players.
Yeah.
I'd still choose just a guy who's not going to play if you need money. I just wouldn't touch the Dragons. They look hopeless to me.
Yeah, the only real standout for them in the last while has probably been Zach Lomax, who does return this week. But I mean, he's now priced at I think he's pretty well north of 700k, isn't he? So like, he probably wouldn't want to. Yeah, 769. That's way too much coin probably to be spending on a Dragons player at the moment.
Not a chance. No, I don't think I'd buy him at plus 600 with the way that the Dragons are playing. So
yeah, probably a good call there. All right. Now, something that will be very interesting to make up the bottom half of the top 8 is the first Sunday game. We've got the Knights versus the Rabbitohs. We've got Bradman Best coming back in this week. And surprisingly, Jackson Hastings, after Preston landed on his ankle and he looked in all sorts, he's been named this week, which is really good. Other than that, there's not really much to talk about on the Knights side. On the Rabbitohs, we have Totola down in the reserves, so that will be interesting to keep an eye on. And we have Ben Lovett dropping out. And Shark Mitchell and Jai are up prop. We've got Kolomatangi in host and the edges, Tellis Duncan and Cheekham on the bench. That'll be an interesting one to see how the rotations work. But for me, that just sounds like Cam Murray's going to have, especially in an important game like this. I just feel like this is going to be a Cam Murray special.
Yeah. He'll play 80 minutes, won't he? Has to.
You'd think so. Like the only situation where Cam Murray wouldn't play 80 in this game, I would think, would be like if they were up by like 15 points or something like that. I mean, in a game like this, I don't think I could see it. Like, in all honesty, I'd probably think the Knights are more likely to go up by 15 at the moment. But like the Rabbits have to click at some stage, surely. Like they looked like one of the only teams that could potentially take down Penrith about 2 months ago, but now they just aren't working. Des, Latrell's been okay, but not really what we were hoping for if you brought him in the last couple of weeks. Would you be actively going for him now? It's too close to the bye now, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's too close. And last week he didn't look up to scratch. He had like something wrong with his finger. He was carrying on about it. I think when he has those niggles, you don't want to bar of Latrell because he doesn't really inject into that back line at all. On those sweeping plays, it's just like Cody Walker takes over because he can easily just act as that second fullback and go left and right where Latrell should be. So I'm almost considering. Well, I kind of have to hold Cody Walker now because I'm 5k off the trade to Munster. I still have like 6 Rabbitohs in my team, so I'm just hoping they do something this week, and then next week I think I'm going to have to make that trade somehow. Hopefully, if Cody goes big and Munster somehow doesn't go big, I can make the trade somehow. But yeah, at this point, it's just I'm hoping Souths pull it out because they just haven't been looking good at all.
Yeah, it's been a real shock, actually. I thought they would really kick into gear post-Origin, but it has not happened. Over on the Knights side, they've got a more relevant backline than the Sharks. Like, nearly every player in there's got some value. I said the other week, I reckon Dane Gagai is probably the best pod to bring in anywhere at this stage of the season, and he had a cracker last week. Marju had a bit of a down week, no try. That'll happen sometimes. But, like, is there... A lot of these players are probably too expensive to go chasing now unless you really got a good straight swap for them, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Marju's 670k and his price is falling pretty rapidly at the moment. Ponga's 1.02 million, so I don't think you're going to go and buy him. I think 99% of the top 1% of teams have him anyway. So he's kind of not really a point of difference at all anymore. Gagai's 750. I mean, Dom Young might be the only guy that you might start to look at from the Knights. I'd say the rest of them are probably out of range now.
Yeah, it's a tough call because like some of them have been going absolutely fantastic. I mean, that's why they're priced there. They're scored well and they're priced there for a reason. I think some of the forwards, like, it's not really the time for them. Like Fitzgibbon and Frizzell haven't been doing too bad, especially Fitzgibbon. But like, I don't think it's really a good time to bring those guys in, especially with a lot of us only having like one or two trades or somewhere around there. I think it's really just those backline guys that we're shuffling at this stage of the season, right, Des?
Yeah. I think Dom Young is a good shout, actually. He hasn't been in the best try-scoring form over the last few weeks. I think he's still top try-scorer for the season, though, so it's like he's got to click back into gear as the Knights really have to, win a couple of these last 3 games to make the 8. So he just looks extremely good outside of Gagai, who's having an absolute worldie of a season. Like, who would have thought at the start of the season that Gagai would be like, top averaging center wing for the year with Azarko second best? It's just crazy to think about. So, yeah, I think Young is kind of the guy to target at that price range. He's a bit cheaper than the other guys there. So, yeah, he's the one.
Yeah, I think I agree. If you're going to make a play, you go for Young. Gagai, like it's been a funny old season from Gagai. He's done so well, and then yet he stayed relevant through the Origin period because he didn't get selected. So few people got on him because they thought he might be in that Queensland team. So if you are in the market for someone, I think you probably do have to go Dom Young now. But yeah, if you got on Gagai, well done to you. It's pretty much just the Latrell, Murray, and those backline guys. Hey, from these 2 teams, right?
Battle of the backlines, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. All right, move on to the last game of the round, and it's not particularly pretty viewing. This could be a bit of a bludger of a game, but we've got Nick Kotrick still starting on the wing. We have Tom Starling and Schiller on the bench, which is Ricky Stewart strikes back. He's behaved most of this season, hey, and then he's pulled some fast ones with Horsburgh and some interesting benches the last few weeks. But yeah, other than that, it's mostly 1-17. We've got Jared Croker coming back in and Sami Solu dropping out. Preston's suspended for 2 weeks, and we've got Corey Waddell in the edge spot for the Dogs. Liam Knight's moved to prop. And Tavita Pangai Jr. is named at 17, despite the news coming out that he wants to go into boxing. Des, thoughts on TPJ's boxing career?
Yeah, I think it'll probably be more successful than his NRL career, to be honest. The amount of times he's been in the sin bin, I think he's got a nice stance to him. He's got like the boxing physique, so I can see him being pretty good. Actually, you wouldn't want to face him in the ring, that's for sure.
It does look like that. Hey, he's got some power behind him, and I think rather than sort of grinding out for 40, 50 minutes, if he can do that once every couple of months instead of once a week and getting all these injuries and suspensions and things, I think he'll be a bit better suited to a boxing ring. It'll be an interesting one. Brain, is there a single player that you want to look at from the Bulldogs? It's not really pretty viewing, is it?
This whole game bores me terribly. I mean, Ricky Roulette's kicking in. Tarpany, we don't know what's going on with his minutes. 1 week he'll play 60, the next he'll play 43. Same with Horsburgh. The rotation's a bit all over the shop. I only have Tarpany at this point in this game. I don't have any Bulldogs. I sold Preston probably a month and a half ago. I'm lucky I've avoided most of them. I had Carraz at one point until he got injured and traded him out mid-season or whenever it was. So, I mean, he's the only guy really that's relevant, Carraz. Like he's probably the guy that has the base and maybe the upside in scoring, but I'll let this one through to the keeper. I think this whole game's going to be a bit of a bludger, like you said. Yeah,
Carraz, he had been pretty consistent. I think he had like a 5-point range for the game. Yeah, just looking at it now, he had 71, 72, 69, 67. Great consistency, but yeah, came back down to earth and like at his price at this point, I'm not interested in this in this type of game. Des, you got much else on this game that you'd be interested in looking at?
No, not really much interest. The Raiders backline, I guess, if you wanted to take a stab at it, but there's no real like Supercoach guns. I guess Tomoko, he's been pretty solid all season. Like if he can barge over for a couple, he was looking very solid like mid-year, kind of when Kuraz went down. I had him as well before he got injured. That's when Tomoko started going well. So you never know. He could, if you wanted to take a stab at them, but the Raiders just don't have the best draw really to end the year. So I'm kind of in agreement. Just avoid this game altogether.
Yeah, I would have thought Rapana at fullback might have been okay, but I mean they got their pants pulled down by the Storm the other week, and he scored 22. So yeah, I will definitely let that one pass. All right, so that's pretty much the team list. So we'll talk a little bit of strategy before we finish up. So at this point of the season, we've got 3 weeks left. How many trades have you guys got floating around? I've got 2, but not great depth. What about you, Brain?
I've got 3 left. I feel like my depth is okay. I made a couple of silly moves recently. I bought in Hammer a couple of weeks ago as a bit of a pod, so that's ended terribly. I probably got maybe 4. I've probably got 22 to 23 playable players that I'd be okay playing. No AE nightmares either, so I'm relatively happy with where I'm sitting. But I've been mindful of the restings in round 27, so I've made sure I've held on to a couple, and I don't know whether I'll need to now. So maybe I pull the trigger on one this week.
Yeah. If you're somebody with 3 trades, I think you're probably doing pretty well at this stage of the season, so I don't mind that. All right, Des, what about you? How are you going? Have you got a couple up your sleeve?
No, I've just got the one left. So if I did have a couple, I'd definitely be swinging Monster in this week, but unfortunately I'm just off him, so I really don't know what I'm going to do with this last trade. I think I'm still going to try and get Monster. I just have no idea how I'm going to do it. Yeah, I think Storm is the team to target. Maybe even like Eli Katoa. We didn't really touch on him that much, but he looked extremely good last week. He's just getting put into holes. So if there was any like kind of high upside front second rower to target, I think he might be the guy that I'm likely to bring in.
Yeah, it could be an interesting one. Yeah, Katoa's a funny one because like at the start of the season he was doing really well, and especially when he went over for a try. And then we had the Nelson moving to Edge saga. And now it was bench Katoa, and now we've got starting Katoa. What's he priced at now? He's probably around the sort of 500-ish mark, low mid 500s.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'll 5'11" he's at.
Yeah, okay. So look, that's not the worst play, in all honesty. Like if he can bag one or maybe even a double this week, dare I say, against a softer Dragons team, that could be a very spicy option. I don't mind that, but like probably only if you are really keen and have a great swap for it or a couple of trades left to play around with, right?
Yeah, you've got to have the trades, obviously. But I love Desi going balls to the wall, just no trades for the last 2 rounds. I don't know whether I've got that in me, but
I've got no head-to-head like leagues that I'm left, playing in. I'm pretty much out and about, and no cash leagues, nothing. So it's just purely an overall play. Like, is Katoa going to outscore, Ryan Madison over the last 3 weeks? I think absolutely yes is the answer.
Agree with that. Eli Katoa's on my radar as well. I'm tempted to even do Hopgood to Eli Katoa this week.
Ooh.
Hopgood, I mean, I can make 170, 180k from that trade.
I like it.
Hopgood's got the Roosters, the Panthers, then a bye. Katoa has the Dragons into the Titans. Broncos round 27, and I've got Nikora Olakau'atu and Fafita I can play in my 2RF for the final round, so I don't have to play Katoa in round 27. So I like the Katoa play. It's a good shout.
Yep, I quite like that as well. Final thoughts for this week. Like, we've mostly covered it. We've got players, Storm players, Captain Nathan Cleary, and that's about all she wrote. Hey,
it's a pretty simple week when you put it like that.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of carnage, but the results come out pretty simple.
I think when you look at the well-owned guys, there's not many of them out, luckily. So when you're talking carnage, it's like there's a lot of movement in the team lists, but not much movement when you're looking at Supercoach. So we got off lightly, I think.
Yeah, it's sort of one of those team lists where it'd be really, really exciting if it happened early season, because there'd be a couple of options to bring in, but probably not now at this stage when you're just focusing on those top high ceiling guns in those matchups. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me. I'm Scoop. This has been 3 people on the podcast this week. We've got Supercoach Brain and Dez joining for this week. I hope you go well this week, and good luck with those trades.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.